Hello and welcome back to another Minecraft episode here on our Minecraft server. We are super excited to be back at it with another one today. In the last episode, we threw together this thing right behind me here. You can see we have a new iron farm tower that we built, and it has been running absolutely fantastic, and we have a plethora of iron now available for us at all times, which is amazing. In between episodes, we also threw down some wheat, and we've got a wheat farm growing over here by the retaining wall we put up in the last episode. Now, I don't know if this is the finished product of what we are going to do over here, but this is a start of a food supply as well, because we have been running low on food recently. We also built the first edition of this here minecart track, which kind of got skimmed over in the last episode. This thing does definitely need a lot of work still. That can be a lot more beautiful, but I didn't actually show this on screen, I don't think. This goes all the way right down to our spider farm, because we covered up our cave entrance where we would have got down here before. And so this is quick and easy access, which is awesome, because we can just come right down here and get levels whenever we need it, which is super handy and convenient for us as well. As far as this episode goes, there's a lot of stuff that could happen here. I want to start building our mega base, or I don't even know if it will be a mega base, but a real big house basically is my plan. I have lots of different ideas of things that we could do. Of course, I want to make things like this here mine shaft a lot more pretty, but this house is starting to get a little bit small, and I think it is time for an upgrade, because not only are our chests over here pretty full most of the time, we actually have been going into overflow mode down below. And you can see we've got a whole bunch of cobblestone and dirt, and also in between episodes we did a bunch of mining where we got a whole bunch of wood. Now this is actually super convenient and handy for the building project that I have in mind for this episode. So before we get too carried away here, moving on to the next thing, we need to find a place where we're going to lay down this house. Now, the plan is I do want to build a house. I'm not sure what that looks like, and I'm not sure where that is located yet, but I'm thinking somewhere in this area, continuing just on what we have been doing. Maybe we could build it alongside this cliff like we had plans for over here as well, or maybe we'll just build it up on this hill here. But let's start with a bit of a foundation. So you might be able to tell a bit of time has passed just because of how grown this wheat is. But if you look up on the hill here, you can see something rather large. So I started to lay out a bit of a foundation of what our house might look like over up on the hill over here. And yes, for comparison, compared to our little house over here, it is quite the size difference, but I think it may actually be a reasonable build size for the kind of architecture that I like to build with. On the inside here, you can see I've clear cut the whole hill down, so it's kind of one level. And what I want to do is build this whole house up so that it is actually all at one level. Now there should be a walk-in entrance on the upper level as well as on a middle level and a lower level. And I think that could create for some more variation, because at this point in time, it is just a massive block. And I think the risk of building in large scales like this is that things tend to get really boring and you skip over all the little details. With some of our other builds, with their small size, it's nice because you can do detailing really easily and you can fit texture in a way that doesn't feel repetitive or boring. But in giant builds, sometimes it's at risk of becoming kind of plain Jane. And so what I want to try to do is incorporate as many little details as I can into a house this scale. Now, I know it is quite large, but I think there is actual potential here. Because let's just say, for example, if we were to put a door in kind of on this level here. Now, this would be, in fact, that's even probably too high. But let's say we build a level walk-in on this floor, then you could have a basement that's in underneath the ground that feels normal for this kind of height. And then additional floor above that and 2 or 3 more on top of that. In the end, this thing could be 5, 6, 7 floors tall. It's probably gonna be a pretty large mansion in all honesty, but I really like building architecture, and I think this could be a fun way to try to challenge how do you make things unique and different and interesting even at this large scale. So I'm going to start to do a little bit of a floor layout here, and we can see what we can start to kind of make some shapes out of this and see where that takes us. Okay, so I got a bit of dark oak here and kind of started to lay out the levels of where the floors will be. Now I think there will still probably be one more floor up here and maybe even one more above that, but we could probably walk in on ground level here as well. But you can see kind of what I've got going. So there's one on the very low level, one on the middle level, and one on this level here. And it's kind of just the idea is that you have walk-in level entry points. So this is a bit of a high point, but if you have a staircase or something like that coming up to here, you're just able to walk in on this level. And when the hill naturally goes further down, that feels like the natural level as well. Now for the parts that are seemingly underground here, they are actually level on the outside as well. And so what we'll do is we'll cut out a little section where we'll have some rooms here, and then that'll just be like a smaller floor. So they might not necessarily be the whole size of this building, but we'll have some cool little cutaways. And even same with this front door over on this side that we cut out. We can just make a little room here that has, you know, some staircases that go up or something like that. And then we'll just create more rooms as we need them. And so now it's really just a matter of figuring out what are the rooms we want and what is the layout of the house. Now, I tend to be more of a creative builder, and so I may not actually practically need nearly this much space in survival, but I do like the idea of just creating rooms for the sake of, you know, really exuberant kitchens and large bedrooms and that kind of stuff. And so now we could start to lay out a bit of the floor layout, and that's the part that I find pretty exciting. So let's get started on some of that now. Alrighty, and after a bit more work here, we don't have all the walls put in yet, but I did put in all the outside walls and the floors in, so you can kind of get a better idea of what the space looks like here. I haven't put the stairs in yet, but if you just come in the side doors, you can kind of see what we're looking at. I put on this next floor and another floor up here as well, so I think we'll have some elevation, which helps break up the house into separate spaces a little bit. Now, we obviously will have staircases that go down below and all that kind of thing. But now before we have the roof on, of course, we get a pretty good sense of what this house will actually be like. Now, like I said before, it is obviously quite large, and breaking it up with some walls and stuff will probably feel like some big old maze. But if we do put on some windows and some decks and an actual roof, break up the rooms into actual individual spaces, I think the space will come together a lot nicer. And I think this is a good sized project for us for now, because it may take a while to get all the details in, but I am excited to see how this thing will all come together, because right now this is not the most visually pleasing thing to look at. But once we start to get some windows and decks and things like that, I think this place will really start to come together in a much nicer way here. Okay, so we've started to lay out a bit of the foundations here of this house, and you can kind of see I've put in the walls and started to lay out a bit of a floor design here. Now, like I said before, this is quite still rigid and square, and I would like to shape this house out a bit more. But kind of what I'm doing is, I mean, you can kind of describe it like painting. It's like we're doing the big main brush strokes just to get a general rough idea of what things are going to look like by blocking out the rooms kind of like this. You can see we have a few just what I would call rule sets of how to build the house. For example, every hallway is 2 blocks wide and every doorway is 1 block wide. And then there's a room, and then you can just kind of see. So what I'm doing is none of these rooms have a purpose yet at this point, but I've kind of just started with the stairs and then started to put in the walls. So my thinking is that at each entranceway, there should be staircases all the way up. So kind of over by this door, you can go onto this floor and then up to the next floor as well. And you can see there's another staircase way over there there on the same side. Now, I haven't done this floor, obviously. I haven't put in any walls or anything like that, but you can kind of start to get a rough idea of, okay, so if there's a door here, there should be a staircase near it. And then this staircase down here would lead to another door on the other floor. And so that starts to give us a framework of how we can block out our house. Everywhere where there's stairs, there's a door, and then we can start to build these other rooms around it. I also want these thicker hallway spaces where we can put in just little pieces of furniture and other things like that to kind of fill out the house space as well. But then you can have access to everywhere as quick and easy as possible. Now, there are a few exceptions to the rules, obviously. I think the way that I build is kind of about building a rule system and then building exceptions to those rules to make cool, unique cases. So for example, let's say we wanted a really cool feature in the middle of the house that goes right down through all the floors. We could do something like that that then passes through, and then of course there would need to be a bunch of exceptions to the rules for that special case. But that's kind of the fun of it. Once you start to build the rules, then you can block out the house and get some rough idea kind of like this, and then you can go through and fill in all the little details or smaller brush strokes, as we say, to kind of bring the whole thing together in the end. So obviously, I don't know if this is what I want the final result to actually look like, but at least this gives us a rough idea to get started as well. We could punch in some decks and things like that to kind of push open these spaces and maybe leave some areas open as well. And then we'll start to furnish near the end. But I think this is a good starting place for the time being. So let's move on to the next floor. So another quick little update for you here on the upper floor. We have started to put in some walls and actually build up a bit of a framework so that we can see what we're looking at. I've left a big open section right here that I think could kind of be like a common room, like a living room or a kitchen or something like that. And then there's a bunch of little rooms off to the sides as well. Now, it's kind of harder to get a general idea of what we're looking at with the walls up like this, but I haven't put in all the details of the rooms. I just kind of mapped out the hallways here so you can kind of see what we're looking at. It was a similar layout to the floor below, except this one has a hallway down the middle of the floor, where the other floor below us didn't necessarily have that here. This hallway goes all the way down, and it actually might feel like too long of a stretch where we might need to put another hallway in at some point, but that is kind of a blocked out layout now. You can get a better sense of the shape with some of these walls put in place and how big these rooms might be. And one of the things that I'm realizing is there might be too many just hallways and rooms. It kind of feels almost like a maze that you're trying to navigate. And I kind of like that in some ways, because I feel like it could be like really good for like hide and seek or like games like that where you kind of just get lost in this mansion. But I also do think that there might need to be some more spaces like this where it's still a room that still has a purpose, but it doesn't necessarily have walls that block it off in an individual little one block doorway or something like that. Now, the other thing to think about is when I start to put in these rooms on these kinds of floors, what I can do is, let's say we want to put in a wall here, and this room here wants some sort of bathroom or closet or something like that. We could do this kind of space as well to block it off. Or in some cases, let's say not everyone wants a bathroom, but everyone wants a closet. We could do something like this, where if this room over here gets a closet going in here, then this room also. And so I might space out some of the rooms a little bit further, something along those lines, but I'm not really sure what all these rooms will actually look like or what their purpose is yet. And I don't think making more rooms is going to make it necessarily any better or easier, but it's just kind of, I'm just doing it for the sake of doing it. So I think I want to start to figure out some of the details about what each of these things are going to be, and then I will start to fill in more of these details like these smaller side rooms. Yeah, but progress is good, and we're making a lot of good headway here, getting the shape of this house blocked out, and I can't wait to see what this thing starts to look like with more windows and decks too, I've mentioned a few times, and of course all the walls put in. Now, furnishing it will be a completely different story. This is going to be a project for the long haul, but so far, just blocking out with the wood here is going pretty well. So let's keep going. All right, so you guys are definitely going to have to bear with me for a minute here because of how this house looks. It is, I'm not going to lie, kind of hideous looking at this point in time. But if I just turn my camera around, you can see we have done, we've made a monstrosity. Now, this is the whole house without any details or jut outs or anything like that, but there's a few major things that you can see that we've done here. So first of all, we've added some decks some windows, and of course a roof. Now let's take a look at this thing from another angle over here, and you can kind of start to see just the shape that we're going for. Now of course there is still a ton of work that needs to happen, and I really do want to pull out the shape of this house a lot more, but for a starting position this is actually not looking all that bad when you get to the bottom of it. Now okay, maybe it does look not that great, but I think that it is a great foundation to start where we are kind of going in the direction. Now, obviously, there's these huge walls and these huge big roofs that aren't all that attractive, but the shape of the house is kind of mainly blocked out, and then we can fill in those finer details, kind of like what we were talking about. But let's just go through a bit of a tour here. So here we are on the top floor where there are just tons and tons of rooms. Like we talked about before, this kind of gives us almost woodland mansion vibes because of how ongoing this house just goes. And you can walk right onto the roof here. Now, this obviously will be cleaned up in the future as well as these decks. But the big thing is going to be finishing this thing and bringing in all those little details. Now, you can see before we didn't have any walls up here or this upper floor. Now, this is because our roof is so large that we actually opened up a lot of extra space where we could put in more rooms with closets and decks and all sorts of things. Now, wherever possible, I did try to add in as many windows and fun little details as possible. So, for example, these rooms over here, each room will have 1 or 2 windows if it can, as well as many other little spaces as possible. But we do kind of need to go in and fill out all of the details. So technically right now, if we're counting down from the top, we are here on floor 1, 2, 3. This is the 3rd floor from the top, and you can see it starts to look a whole lot different with all of these walls filled in. Some of these hallways feel really quite long, but there's a lot of space to work with here where we can do all sorts of things. For example, these little rooms could be easily made into teeny tiny little bedrooms or storage rooms or things like that. And if we think about Minecraft purposes, we could make rooms like an enchantment room, a portal room, a storage room, and then we can additionally add on all sorts of other fun stuff like, I don't know, a kitchen or a TV room or a living room and that kind of stuff as well. But this does just kind of keep going. There's a total of something like 5 floors, or 4.5, I guess you could say, because there's 2 on the upper section, 2 on the main section, and then there are these little lower wing sections, which I wouldn't really necessarily call this a floor. But if you count these little alcove things as a floor in themselves, then this would be the 5th floor as well. So you can see this is quite a massive house. Now, there is one final detail that I would like to add before we call this an episode, because although we won't be able to furnish it in this episode, there has been another milestone achievement kind of along the lines of this over here. So let's address that really quick. Maybe it isn't the most visually stunning thing ever, but here we have created a 200 subscriber carpet, because on this channel we have just surpassed 200 subscribers, which is actually super exciting for me. And I know it's not that big of a deal, but I do want to do these little things in the world that kind of add mementos or memories to the progress that we have made on this channel, because really it is only thanks to you guys that we are able to even be celebrating this at all, and that I am here making content because you guys are a part of this community, and we are just getting started on the adventure, but it is super cool and exciting that we are able to celebrate this together. So this is kind of for you guys. Now, who knows, maybe it won't stay this color, maybe it won't stay in this location, but at least there is something here in the house that we created in this episode when we got 200 subscribers. So once again, thank you guys all so much for being a part of this channel. Thank you for watching this episode. If you did make it this far, that is super awesome, and I am super excited to be creating. So we will see you in the next video. Have a great one.